You got 30 seconds to tell me who gave you permission to be here, or I'm writing you up for trespassing on county property." The man who said it wore a tan uniform with pressed creases and a badge that caught the 8 a.m. light through the front windows. He stood just inside the doorway with his thumbs hooked in his belt, eyes moving across the room the way a code inspector looks for violations, not evidence, just confirmation of what he'd already decided. He had not asked her name. He had not shown a warrant or a complaint form. He had seen a black woman behind the counter of a diner in Garland County, Georgia, and made his assessment before the doors swung completely shut behind him. He was standing in her building. He did not know that yet. Nadia Cross set down the ceramic mug she'd been polishing, not quickly, not slowly. She set it down with the same measured movement she used for everything, deliberate, without waste. She looked at the man in the doorway. She looked at his badge. She looked at the door behind him, which still carried the reversed letters of the address she had signed a lease on 8 years ago. Then she looked back at him. "I'd like to see the complaint form," she said, "dated and signed." That was not the answer he expected. People who were caught where they didn't belong didn't ask for paperwork. They explained themselves. They apologized. They left. The man, Sheriff Colt Briggs, 19 years elected to the office of Garland County Sheriff, shifted his weight and reached into his breast pocket. He pulled out a printed notice, not a complaint form, a trespass advisory. The radio behind the counter was playing low. The tail end of a county public notice broadcast, and the words from it drifted across the morning quiet like something Briggs himself had arranged. Garland County Ordinance 18-4. No individual may remain on private commercial property designated as restricted without express authorization from the registered property owner. Unauthorized presence is subject to citation under state and county code. Briggs held the notice out without quite extending his arm far enough for her to take it. "There's been a complaint," he said, "from a county resident regarding unauthorized operation of this establishment." "What resident?" "That's not information I'm required to disclose at this stage." "Then I'll need the case number," Nadia said, "and a copy of that notice, stamped with today's date and time." The word copy landed in a room that had gone very quiet. The 2 waitstaff near the far booth had stopped moving. The cook visible through the pass-through window had gone still. Briggs looked at her for a long moment. Then he did something that was not quite a smile. It was the expression of a man who has decided that the woman in front of him is making things harder than they need to be, and who is pleased about that, because harder is his preferred terrain. "You keep talking," he said, "like you have standing here." He had 19 years of a county that did whatever he said. He had a badge, a printed notice, and a deputy standing 4 feet behind him who hadn't spoken yet. What he did not have was a single document with her name on it. The receipt printer at the end of the counter clicked once, then stopped. The silence after it was the kind that precedes something. The diner on Holloway Road had been open since 6 a.m., same as every day for the past 8 years. The sign above the front door said "Cross Table" in plain block letters, black on cream, no tagline, no logo. The kind of sign that didn't need to explain itself. Nadia had arrived at 5:15, same as every day. She'd unlocked the rear entrance, run the equipment checks, reviewed the previous day's register report, and written 3 items in her small leather notebook before the first employee arrived. The notebook was dark brown, worn at the spine, held together with a rubber band she replaced every few months. She wrote in it the way some people breathe, without announcing it. without stopping to check if anyone was watching. That particular morning, she wrote, March 14th, equipment check complete. Unit 3B at 34.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Staff arriving on time. Delivery scheduled 9 a.m. Then she tied on an apron and went to work. The diner held 28 covers, 8 stools at the counter, 4 two-tops along the window, 2 four-tops along the far wall, and 1 six-top in the back corner that families used on Sunday mornings. Every surface was clean. The menus were laminated and freshly wiped. The floor, black and white tile worn smooth in the traffic lanes, was swept before the first customer came through the door. Nadia moved through the space with the kind of efficiency that doesn't come from habit. It comes from having designed the system yourself, knowing where every inefficiency used to be, having fixed it, and then fixed it again. Her 2 senior waitstaff, Deja, 6 years, Calvin, 4, arrived within 3 minutes of each other at 5:45. They did not need instruction. They knew where everything was because she had told them once, and the telling had been precise enough that it didn't need repeating. By 6:15, the first customers were in. By 7, every counter stool was occupied. Nadia poured coffee, ran the register, and watched. That was the part people didn't see. She noticed the couple at the window table who came every Tuesday and Wednesday, always ordered the same thing, always left exact change. She noticed the man at the far end of the counter who came in alone, sat with his back to the wall, and read the same folded newspaper section front to back. She noticed the day the coffee wholesaler switched to a different bean supplier without telling her, caught it in the taste of the test cup she pulled at 6 a.m. before any customer received a mug. She wrote things down. Not compulsively, selectively. Dates, times, specific observations. The notebook was half full. The first indication that this particular morning would not be ordinary came at 7:40. Not from Briggs. From a man named Gerald Ford, who came in twice a week for breakfast and had, on 3 separate occasions in the past month, made comments loud enough for the room to hear. That morning, he pulled out his stool at the counter, looked at Nadia wiping down the surface 2 feet away, and said to no one in particular, "Somebody ought to check on who's running this place. Used to be a decent establishment." Deja's back went rigid. Calvin pretended to check a receipt. Nadia did not look up. She finished the wipe, moved the cloth. "What can I get you, Gerald?" Not because she was deferring. Because the question had not been directed at her, it had been directed at the room, and the room would make its own conclusions. What mattered was that she had heard it clearly. The date, the words, the approximate time. By the time Gerald's eggs arrived, she had written 3 lines in the notebook. Ford was not the first. He was the most recent. In the 5 weeks before that Wednesday morning, there had been 7 similar incidents. Not threats, not slurs, not directly, but comments loud enough to carry about management, about neighborhood character, about whether certain establishments were operating with the right oversight. Always from people who arrived with the ease of regulars. Always in the morning, when the room was fullest. She had written all of them down. Lenora Vass first appeared on a Thursday in late February. She came in at 10:15 after the breakfast rush, when the diner was down to 3 occupied tables and Nadia was reviewing the week's invoices at the counter. Vass was dressed for a county commissioner meeting. Navy blazer, pearl earrings, hair done with the effort that signals professional calculation rather than vanity. She moved through the diner the way developers move through properties they're assessing, noting the square footage, the traffic patterns, the condition of the fixtures. She ordered coffee, black, and looked around while Nadia poured it. "This is a nice space," Voss said. "Good bones. I've been watching the corridor develop. Route 9 is going to be interesting in the next few years." "It's been interesting for 8 years, Nadia said. Voss smiled at that, not warmly. "Who's managing the property?" "For which property?" A pause. "This one." "The manager's here," Nadia said, and refilled her own mug and moved to the next table. Voss did not correct herself. She did not pursue the question. She left 7 minutes later, left a $5 on the counter for a $2 coffee, and did not return. But she had looked, when she thought no one was watching, at the framed occupancy permit on the wall near the restrooms. She had looked at the name on it. Nadia had noticed. The week after Voss's visit, Wells Parrish arrived with his clipboard. He was a county health inspector, not the first to come through, not the second, but the third in a period of 8 weeks. The first 2 visits had resulted in clean reports. Parrish's first visit, 6 weeks earlier, had flagged 2 items: a label placement on a dry goods shelf and the temperature log documentation format. Both corrected within 24 hours. Both re-inspected and cleared. Parrish's second visit came on a Tuesday, unannounced, at 7:10 a.m. before the equipment had reached full operating temperature from the morning warm-up cycle. He stood in front of Unit 3B with his thermometer probe and his clipboard and wrote something down. Nadia opened the filing cabinet behind the counter without being asked. She pulled out the previous inspection clearance report, dated, signed, initialed by the department, and set it on the counter beside him. "This is the cleared report from the last visit," she said. "And here is the temperature log for Unit 3B, automated, records every 15 minutes. The timestamp is 6:44 this morning." Parrish looked at the log. He looked at his clipboard. He wrote something else. "I'll note the prior clearance," he said. "I'd appreciate a copy of whatever you write today," Nadia said. "Dated and timed." He left. She wrote 4 lines in the notebook. Then she called a number she did not explain to anyone in the room. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes, and the only part of it anyone nearby could hear was the last sentence she said before she ended the call. "I know," she said. "I'm watching." The Wednesday that Briggs came in, March 14th, was cold for mid-March. The kind of cold that surprised Georgia after 2 weeks of warmth. That made the regulars mention it, and the radio run a weather advisory before the 7 a.m. news segment. Nadia had noted the weather in the notebook that morning, not because weather was significant, because documentation was a habit she had built the way other people build muscle, deliberately, repeatedly, until it required no conscious decision. At 8:22, the front door opened. Sheriff Colt Briggs came in first. He was tall, broad across the shoulders, with the kind of tan that comes from standing outside regularly rather than vacationing. His uniform was pressed. His hat was on, which he did not remove when he entered. Behind him, Deputy Sloan Avery. Quieter, carrying a notepad, with the expression of a man who has learned to keep his face very still, followed 2 steps back and said nothing. Briggs moved to the counter. Not to a stool, to the open space at the end where the register sat. He put both hands flat on the surface and looked at Nadia. "There's been a complaint," he said, "lodged by a county resident, alleging unauthorized operation of a commercial establishment at this address. I'm here to issue an advisory notice. I'd like to see the complaint, Nadia said. Complainant identity is withheld at the preliminary stage. Then the case number. Briggs reached into his breast pocket and produced the printed notice. He read from it, not because he needed to, but because reading from a document was part of the performance. Georgia Code Annotated, Section 16-7-21, he said. Criminal trespass, entry upon land of another without permission, or remaining on land of another after being asked to leave. He set the notice on the counter with a flat, deliberate sound. This is formal notification that the status of this property is under review pending ownership verification. Nadia did not pick up the notice immediately. She looked at it. Then she looked at Avery, who was writing in his notepad and not looking at her. I want a copy of that notice, she said, stamped with today's date and time. You'll receive a copy through the standard process. I'd like one now, dated and stamped. Briggs's jaw shifted, a sideways pressure like he was selecting his next word from a poor inventory. He picked up the notice, accepted the stamp Avery produced from his jacket, and pressed it. Garland County Sheriff's Office. On March 14th, 2024, 8:23. He slid the copy across the counter. Nadia picked it up, read it, folded it once, lengthwise, and set it beside the notebook on the shelf below the counter. Is there anything else you need from me this morning? She asked. That was when Briggs made his error. Not the first. The first had been walking in, but the one that would matter later. He leaned forward and lowered his voice, in the way men lower their voices when they want to make a point without making it officially. You might want to think, he said, about whether this is a fight worth having. Property situations like this have a way of getting complicated. For the person on the wrong side of the desk. Nadia held his gaze. I appreciate the caution, she said. I'll note the time this conversation occurred. Briggs pulled back. He looked at her the way he probably hadn't looked at anyone in his county in a long time, not with contempt, but with the slightly recalibrated expression of a man who has just made a noise and heard something unexpected echo back. He turned to Avery. Write it up, Avery wrote. His eyes once cut sideways to Nadia, then back to his notepad. They left. The door swung shut. The room held its breath for exactly 1 second, and then Deja exhaled from behind the coffee station. What was that? That was case GC-2024-0892, Nadia said. She wrote it in the notebook. And it's going to take a while. What she did not say, not to Deja, not to Calvin, not to the 3 customers who had witnessed everything from the window table and the far counter stool, was that she had known something like this was coming. Not this specific moment, not the exact date, but the general shape of it. The Voss visit, the repeat inspections, the Ford comments. The pattern had been establishing itself for 5 weeks, and Nadia had been watching it establish. The trespass notice now had a case number. The case number was on record, and every document she had collected in the past 5 weeks. Every inspection report, every cleared citation, every entry in the leather notebook was organized in a filing cabinet with color-coded tabs and a table of contents she had typed herself. She pulled out the tab marked County Interaction Log and added the notice. Then she went back to work. The first thing that genuinely unsettled her came not from Briggs, but from the phone 2 days later. Deja called on a Friday evening to say she had received a job offer. Good pay. Same schedule, different employer. Who? Nadia asked. Deja hesitated. I don't know the company exactly. A staffing agency reached out, but it pays more. When did you receive it? Yesterday. Nadia thanked her, said she understood, and ended the call. Then she called Calvin. Calvin, it turned out, had received the same offer. Different contact, same agency, same day. She sat in the back office for 3 minutes. Not to process, she had already processed it. To count, to verify that her count was correct. 2 senior employees, same week, same offer, unsolicited, through an agency whose name neither of them could specify clearly. She wrote in the notebook, March 15th to 16th, 2 employment solicitations, senior staff. Simultaneous, agency unnamed, neither Deja nor Calvin left, but the offer had been extended. And someone had known enough about her operation, who her key employees were, what they earned, when their loyalty might have pressure points, to construct it with precision. Lenora Vass came back on a Tuesday, 18 days after the first visit. This time she came to the Garland County Community Meeting at the county's Civic Hall, not the diner, and she came with a presentation. Nadia was there because the notice had been public and the meeting was open to all county businesses. She sat in the 4th row in a gray cardigan with her notebook open on her knee. Voss stood at the front of the room and spoke for 14 minutes about the county's economic development plan for the Route 9 commercial corridor. Traffic patterns, zoning recategorization, projected tax revenue. What she called strategic property realignment for regional growth. At minute 11, she mentioned, without naming any specific business, that several properties along the corridor would be assessed for compatibility with the redevelopment framework. From the sound the room made at the next slide, a soft collective shift, murmurs, whatever was on it, caused reaction. A man 3 rows ahead said quietly to the person beside him, "That's the diner on Holloway." After the presentation, Nadia waited until the room thinned. Then she walked to the front where Voss was accepting congratulations from county-issue polo shirts. "Commissioner Vass," she said, "I wanted to ask about the economic impact study you referenced. I'd like to review it before the public comment period closes." Vass turned. The smile came on like a switch. "Of course, I'll have my office send the relevant sections." "The full study," Nadia said. "Not the summary. I'll see what's available." A glance to the man beside her, brief, dismissive, carrying more information than any sentence. "It's still in revision, I believe." "I'll wait," Nadia said. "I have time." She turned and walked back up the aisle. As she passed the 3rd row, a man she didn't recognize, thick-necked flannel jacket, seated on the aisle, stuck his leg out. Not far enough to be a trip, far enough to make her step sideways, off balance for 1 stride, grabbing the seat back to her left to keep herself upright. She straightened. She looked at him. He looked back, face flat, and said nothing. She wrote the incident in the parking lot. Civic Hall. Physical contact. Deliberate. Man unknown. Flannel jacket. Aisle seat. Row 3. Approximate time. 8:47 p.m. She did not know his name yet. She would. The impact study never came. Not the full version. Not the summary. Not an email acknowledging the request. 2 weeks after the community meeting, Nadia sent a written request to the county commissioner's office by certified mail. Return receipt. The acknowledgement came back signed and dated March 29th. The study did not. She noted the tracking number in the notebook. The same week, Gerald Ford escalated. On a Wednesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after Briggs's first visit, Ford came in with 2 men Nadia hadn't seen before. They took the 6th top in the back corner, They ordered nothing immediately. They talked at a volume slightly above what the room required, and the topic of their conversation, audible from the counter, was whether the county had finally done something about that place on Holloway. Nadia went to the back corner. "Good morning," she said. "What can I get you?" Ford looked up at her, then at his companions, with an expression of performed bewilderment. "I was wondering when the actual manager was coming over." "I'm the person you need to speak with," Nadia said. "What would you like?" "I'd like," Ford said, leaning back, "to talk to whoever's in charge." "That's me." Her voice did not rise, did not sharpen. She said it the way she said everything, level, precise, with the patience of someone who has had this conversation before and knows how it ends. "Three of you, back corner. Would you like menus?" One of the men with Ford, younger, with the look of someone performing his courage for an audience, half rose from his seat and started to say something. He got as far as, "Lady, he told you," before Ford's hand came down on his arm and pulled him back. Not from decency, from calculation. Causing a scene inside the diner was a different kind of problem than causing one in a parking lot. They ordered. They ate. They left without a tip and without further comment. Nadia cleared the table herself and wrote 4 lines in the notebook. Dorian Fitch first appeared on April 3rd. He arrived with Parrish, which was the first anomaly, because health inspectors and county administrative deputies did not typically arrive together. Fitch was lean, organized, with the manner of someone who had done this exact procedure many times before. He carried a legal-size folder and set it on the counter without being invited to. "Deputy Administrator Fitch, Garland County Office of Business Compliance," he said. "I'm here in conjunction with the ongoing review of this establishment's operational status." "What review?" Nadia asked. Fitch opened the folder. "Following the issuance of Case GC-2024-0892, our office initiated a standard compliance audit. One item has come to our attention." He produced a single sheet. "Your commercial lighting permit, issued in 2019, may have compliance issues under current county building standards. Our office would need to verify the permit's scope against the current installation." Nadia looked at the sheet. Then she turned to the filing cabinet, opened the tab marked Permits and Licenses, and pulled out the original lighting permit, dated November 12, 2019, signed by the Garland County Building and Zoning Office. She set it on the counter. "The permit," she said, "unexpired. Signed by your department." Fitch looked at it. His expression did not change. "There may be a question of interpretive scope," he said. "Which section?" He consulted his folder. He looked at 2 pages. He looked at a third. Then he closed the folder with the flat, controlled movement of a man who has not found what he was looking for, but will not concede that. "Our office will follow up in writing," he said. "I'd like that in writing before you leave," Nadia said. "Today, with the specific provision you're citing." Behind Fitch, Parrish had moved to Unit 3B with his probe. He crouched, inserted it, wrote a number on his clipboard. "What number are you recording?" Nadia asked. Parrish looked up. 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Nadia reached below the counter and produced a printed sheet, the automated temperature log for Unit 3B, current through 6:44 that morning. She set it beside Parrish's clipboard. "The log shows 35.2 at 6:44, she said. "Your reading is at." She checked the clock above the pass-through. 8:51. That's a differential of 6.8 degrees in 2 hours and 7 minutes. The compressor maintenance log is current if you need it. Parrish's pen stopped moving. It was at that moment that Fitch stepped forward. In the movement, whether deliberate or not would be a matter of interpretation. Though the notebook entry would describe it precisely, his forearm came across the counter edge, and the corner of his folder caught the laminated menu rack, knocking it hard into the temperature log sheet, sending it sliding off the counter and onto the floor. The sheet landed face down on the black and white tile. Nadia bent, picked it up, smoothed it. "Sorry about that," Fitch said. His voice said something different entirely. "No harm done," Nadia said. She wrote the time, $8:53, at the top corner of the log in pen, initialed it, and placed it back on the counter. "I'd still like whatever provision you're citing in writing before you leave." They left without producing the provision. Fitch sent a letter 6 days later citing a county building standards provision, describing it as applicable current commercial lighting requirements under Garland County standards, without a specific code reference. Nadia filed it under Fitch correspondence and sent a return letter requesting the specific provision number, certified mail, return receipt requested. She received no reply. She sent a third letter to the Garland County Office of Business Compliance, requesting confirmation that the April 9th letter represented their complete citation and that no additional provisions were being invoked. She attached a copy of Fitch's letter and her own lighting permit. 3 days later, she received a response. The provision cited was real. A 2022 amendment to county commercial property lighting standards. It applied to new construction and substantial renovation, defined as renovation exceeding 60% of a building's assessed value. Cross Table Diner's 2021 renovation had cost $38,000. The building's assessed value was $310,000. The renovation was 12%. Nadia wrote the numbers in the notebook, double underlined, then sent a fourth letter enclosing the renovation permit, the contractor invoices, and the assessed value from the Garland County tax assessor's public records. No further correspondence came on the lighting permit issue. But Fitch was not finished. On April 17th, a letter arrived from the Garland County Office of Business Compliance demanding what it called documentary verification of operational authority. In plain terms, proof that whoever was running the establishment had the legal right to do so, given the ongoing property status review. The letter cited Case GC-2024-0892 as the predicate. It requested within 30 days a complete set of business registration documents, lease or ownership agreements, operational licenses, and franchise authorization documentation, if applicable. Nadia read the letter twice. Then she set it on the desk and sat with it for approximately 45 seconds, longer than she usually took. The 30-day request was not strictly legally enforceable in the way Fitch had framed it. The Office of Business Compliance did not have subpoena authority. The request was compliance theater, designed to cost time, require professional resources, and create a record of non-cooperation if she didn't respond. She would respond, but not in the way Fitch expected. She began assembling the documents that evening, not because the letter required it, because the assembly itself was preparation for something the letter was only a preview of. She organized them the way someone organizes evidence, not the way someone organizes paperwork. Every page sourced, every number double-checked. Every document cross-referenced with a corresponding notebook entry. She returned the complete response package 2 days before the deadline, Not one page missing, not one figure uncorroborated. Wells Parish's third citation arrived on April 22nd. This one was different. The previous citations had been correctable. This one was a proposed license suspension, filed as a preliminary action pending a formal hearing. The basis: pattern of recurring food safety compliance concerns. Nadia read it standing in the back office. The proposed suspension window was 14 days from receipt to respond. She noted the date, April 22nd. She sat at the desk, opened the laptop. Not to Parrish, not to Fitch, not to Briggs. To the Georgia Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, which maintains a formal complaint process for government entities engaged in actions that affect licensed businesses. The email was precise, organized, and attached 7 documents: the 3 inspection reports, the 2 clearance letters, the automated temperature log, and Fitch's letter of April 17th. The subject line was, "Formal complaint, case reference GCP-2024-1147, requested." She sent it at 9:17 p.m. on a Tuesday in late April. Then she closed the laptop and went back to the front of the diner to help Calvin close out the register. "You okay?" Calvin asked. "Yes," she said. That was true. She was not frightened. She was not scattered. She was, in fact, the most organized she had been since this started, which was saying something, because she had been organized from the beginning. On April 29th, Briggs held what the Garland Courier would later describe as a brief statement to local media in the parking lot of the county administrative building. Calvin called her from the parking lot while it was happening. She listened on speaker while she inventoried the supply room. Briggs spoke for 4 minutes. He used no names. He referred to certain commercial establishments currently under county review and questions of operational legitimacy that the county takes seriously. He said the county was committed to ensuring that all businesses operating within Garland County limits are doing so in full compliance with applicable law. The Garland Courier reporter, Tessa Wren, whose byline Nadia had noticed with increasing frequency, asked whether there were specific businesses targeted. "I'm not in a position to name specific cases," Briggs said, "but the county's review process is thorough and ongoing." Wren published a short item the next morning. She did not name Nadia or the diner, but the geographic framing, Route 9 corridor, commercial property review, was specific enough that 3 of Nadia's regular customers called to ask if everything was all right. She told them it was fine. The same week, she received the formal notice of a health department hearing on the proposed license suspension. Hearing date, May 14th. Location, Garland County Administrative Building, Room 112. Presiding officer, the county's appointed hearing administrator. She wrote the date in the notebook. Then she thought about who she needed to call. Gage Morton arrived for the first time on May 3rd. He was not a sheriff's deputy. His vehicle, a white pickup with a magnetized door sign reading Morton Protective Services, LLCE, was not a county vehicle. But he arrived at 8:45 in the morning and positioned himself at the rear entrance of Cross Table Diner in the delivery access lane, when the supply truck from Nadia's food distributor was scheduled at 9. The truck arrived at 9:04. Morton's pickup was blocking the lane. The driver, Ernie, who had made the Cross Table delivery run for 6 years, got out of the cab and asked Morton to move. Morton crossed his arms and told Ernie the lane was under a temporary access restriction by order of the county sheriff. Ernie asked for it in writing. Morton said it was a verbal directive. He didn't need to produce anything. Ernie called Nadia. She came out the rear door She looked at Morton's truck. She looked at the magnetized sign and noted the license plate. She spoke to him directly. "Who contracted your services for this lane?" "County business," Morton said. "Lanes restricted." "Do you have written authorization for that restriction?" "I'm authorized by the county sheriff." "In writing?" Morton's face tightened. He was a large man, wide across the chest and arms, with a face that had been rearranged once or twice and had settled into its current configuration without complaint. He was not accustomed to small talk holding this shape. "Ma'am," he said, and the word landed like a dismissal, "I suggest you step back inside and let the county do its business." "This lane serves my loading dock," Nadia said. "Your vehicle is blocking a delivery I scheduled through a vendor contract. If you don't have written authorization for the restriction, I need you to move." Morton looked at Ernie, then back at Nadia, and smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You're going to want to be careful," he said, "about who you're talking to out here." Nadia wrote his license plate in the notebook. She wrote the name from the door sign. She wrote the time, 9:11 a.m. Morton's truck did not move for 47 minutes. The delivery was delayed. Ernie waited in his cab with the engine running. Nadia stood at the rear door and documented. She called the sheriff's office non-emergency line and asked if there was a written access restriction on the Holloway Road loading dock, serviced by Cross Table Diner. The dispatcher checked. There was no such order on file. She noted the dispatcher's name, Officer Renata Calles, and the call time. At 9:58, Morton's truck moved. Not because of anything Nadia had said, because a white sedan had appeared at the far end of the parking lot, and Morton had looked at it once, and his smile had gone away, and he had gotten in his truck and driven off. Nadia looked at the white sedan. She didn't recognize it. It sat for 30 seconds, then pulled out the way it had come. She wrote, 9:58 a.m. Morton departed after white sedan arrived. Sedan. Unknown. No plates visible from this position. Morton came back on May 8th. This time he came inside. He didn't order anything. He walked in at 7:15 a.m. when the morning rush was at its fullest. Every counter stool occupied, 3 of the 4 window tables full, and stood near the door with his arms crossed. He wasn't talking to anyone. He wasn't causing a disturbance. He was simply present in the way that a large man with a hard face standing near the exit of a crowded room is simply present. Customers glanced at him. A few shifted in their seats. One of the window table couples asked Deja, quietly, if everything was all right. Nadia came from behind the counter. She walked to Morton and stopped 3 feet from him. "Are you here to order something?" "Just observing," he said. "Observing is not a service I offer. If you're not a customer, I need you to wait outside." Morton's expression did not change, but he didn't move toward the door. He shifted his weight slightly toward her. Not quite a step, but a repositioning that communicated something specific about the allocation of space between them. Nadia held her position. "I'll note for the record that you were asked to leave the premises." That was when Morton's hand came out. He didn't hit her. He grabbed her arm, the left one, near the elbow, and squeezed. And his grip was tight enough to communicate exactly what he intended by it. "I can do what I want here, and you know it." 2 things happened simultaneously. Nadia went completely still, not with fear, with the particular stillness of someone processing information very quickly. And Calvin, from behind the counter, said, "Hey," sharply, and came around the end toward them. Nadia's voice was quiet. 3 words. Take your hand off. Morton held for 1 second longer. Then he let go. He stepped back. He looked at Calvin, who had stopped 4 feet away, and then at the room, which had gone the kind of quiet that precedes a decision about what kind of room it is. Morton walked out. Nadia did not move for 3 seconds. Then she said, "To the room in general? I'm sorry for the interruption. Anyone need a refill?" She went back behind the counter. She pulled out the notebook. She wrote precisely, May 8th, 7:22 a.m. Gage Morton, Morton Protective Services, LLC. Physical contact, grip, left arm, elbow, unsolicited, released on verbal request. Witnesses, Calvin Reese, staff. Deja Williams, staff, back position. Approximately 6 to 8 customers. Morton exited without incident. Then she wrote one more word, witnesses, and started a new page. The FOIA request had been submitted on March 29th. It covered all county records related to case GC-2024-0892. All communications between the sheriff's office and the county commissioner's office referencing Cross Table Diner or the Holloway Road property, and all scheduling records for parish's inspection visits. The response came on May 12th, 44 days after submission, which was within the statutory maximum under Georgia's Open Records Act, OCGA Section 501870. Nadia had noted the deadline in the notebook the day she filed. The envelope was thick. She opened it at the back desk before the morning shift started. 47 pages. 11 of them had black rectangles where content had been redacted, with the notation, attorney-client privilege stamped at the edge of each blackout. She read the 36 non-redacted pages first. Most of it was expected. Internal routing of the citation, parish's inspection scheduling requests, Fitch's compliance review initiation form, standard administrative correspondence. But on page 22, there was a scheduling document. An internal calendar printout from the Garland County Commissioner's Office, covering February 14th through March 1st. And on February 20th, there was a meeting entry, BX/CB/Route 9 near, side entrance, 4:30 p.m. BX and CB. Lenora Vass's official staff designation in county documents was LV. Vass's chief of staff was a man named Barton Exley, BX. Sheriff Colt Briggs, CB, February 20th. 3 weeks before Briggs had walked through her front door. She didn't know about the email yet. She would. The body cam footage arrived separately 2 days later in response to the second FOIA request she had filed, submitted the week after Briggs's initial visit, specifically requesting all footage from case GC-2024-0892, Deputy Sloan Avery, badge 1147. The footage came as a transcript. Audio extracted, formatted, with timestamps. She read it in the back office with the door closed. Most of it was the exchange she remembered clearly. But there was a section after the exchange, after she had turned back to the counter, that she had not been close enough to hear. Briggs, speaking at reduced volume, to Avery. The transcript read, 8/24/11, Briggs. Just write it up. She can fight it in court if she wants. 8/24/18, Briggs. These people always fold. 8/24/22, Avery, inaudible. 8/24/27, Briggs. File it by end of week. She read it 3 times. Then she wrote only the timestamp, 8/24/18, and the sentence in the notebook. She underlined it once. These people always fold. Tessa Wren of the Garland Courier called on May 15th, one day after the health department hearing had been administratively postponed. The hearing officer had requested additional time to review the submitted documentation, which Nadia had provided in a binder with a table of contents. Wren was not calling to run a story. She was calling to verify a number. "Ms. Cross," she said, "I'm looking at county tax records. They're public. I just want to confirm one figure. Is it accurate that the property at 1847 Holloway Road generates approximately $412,000 annually in county sales tax revenue?" Nadia said, "Public records are public." Wren paused. "That's a yes?" "That's all I'm prepared to say. If you have questions about the county's review of this property, I direct you to the county administrator's office." Wren thanked her and hung up. Nadia sat with the phone in her hand. Wren had done the math. The figure was correct, not just for this location. Close to it. A reporter who had found the tax records had begun to understand the dimensions of what was happening. Not fully. Not yet. That same afternoon, a call came from an unfamiliar Atlanta number. The woman on the other end introduced herself as an investigator from the Georgia Attorney General's Office, Consumer Protection and Fair Business Practices Division. She had received the complaint filed under case GCP-2024-1147. She had questions about the temperature log, about the timeline of the citations, about Parrish's inspection schedule relative to the initial trespass advisory. Nadia answered each question with a document number and a date. Toward the end of the call, the investigator paused, differently from the procedural pauses she'd been making throughout, a recalibrating kind of pause. "Ms. Cross," she said, "your documentation is thorough." A half-beat. "Unusually thorough?" "I keep records," Nadia said. "I can see that." Another pause, not awkward, the pause of someone revising an assumption. "We'll be in contact." Parrish sent the third citation on a Friday. Nadia received it Saturday morning and read it standing in the back office with her coffee cup in her hand, steam rising. The citation was 3 pages. It cited 3 prior inspections. It referenced a documented pattern of recurring compliance concerns and invoked Georgia Food Service Rules Section 40-7-1 to initiate suspension proceedings where a systemic pattern existed. The 14-day response window began on the date of receipt. She put the coffee cup down. She opened the laptop, and she began to type. Not a defense filing, not a request for a continuance. A comprehensive evidentiary submission, every document, every log, every certified mail receipt, every letter, every notebook entry that had been digitized and timestamped, organized into a single index file, with a cover letter that began, "The following documentation is submitted in response to the proposed license suspension referenced above, and in support of a formal complaint to the Georgia State Franchise Commission regarding coordinated adverse action against a lawfully operating franchise business. The documentation is also provided as supplemental material to AAG case GCP-2024-1147. She typed for 22 minutes without stopping. Then she printed the cover letter, signed it, scanned it, attached it, and sent the submission to 3 addresses: the Garland County Health Department, the Georgia Attorney General's Office, and the Georgia State Franchise Commission in Atlanta. Then she called the Franchise Commission's Business Affairs line and requested a formal hearing date. The administrator asked for the nature of the dispute. "Coordinated regulatory interference with a licensed franchise operation," Nadia said. A brief silence. "What's the size of the franchise?" 12 locations, Nadia said. 214 employees, all Garland County. Another silence, longer this time. I'll have our scheduling office contact you Monday morning. She ended the call. She sat back in her chair. Through the pass-through window, she could hear the diner, the clink of cups, the low register of conversation, the hiss of the grill. Her diner, her employees, her building. The hearing would be in November. She had 6 months. She opened the notebook to a fresh page, wrote the date May 17th, and began a new list. What no one in Garland County understood yet, not Briggs, not Vass, not Fitch, not Parrish, was that the franchise agreement Nadia had signed in 2016 was not a license to operate a single diner on Holloway Road. It was a master franchise agreement covering a defined geographic region, Garland County and its 4 adjacent counties. The agreement granted her the right to open, operate, or license any number of locations within that region. She had exercised that right 11 times. 12 locations total, all operating, all licensed, all tax compliant as of the Georgia Department of Revenue's most recent audit, completed March 3rd, 11 days before Briggs walked through the door of 1847 Holloway Road and told her she had 30 seconds to explain herself. Every lease bore her name. Every payroll account was registered to her taxpayer identification number. Every inspection clearance in every location was filed in a set of identical filing cabinets, color-coded, tabbed, with a table of contents in each of the 12 back offices. Briggs had walked into the smallest of the 12, the original. The one she had opened in 2016 from a single booth lease she'd converted into a full commercial contract when the previous operator surrendered the space. He had walked in, seen an apron, and made a decision. He had no idea what he had walked into. The hearing date came back Monday, November 18th. Atlanta, Georgia State Franchise Commission, Room 4C. Nadia wrote it in the notebook and drew a box around it. 6 months. 185 days. Enough time to build something that could not be knocked over. She had already started. The 6 months between May and November were not quiet. They were the kind of busy that doesn't announce itself. No single moment of crisis, no dramatic confrontation at a podium. Just the relentless accumulation of paperwork, phone calls, certified mail, and the particular exhaustion of building something precise under conditions designed to make you imprecise. Nadia ran the diner every day. She answered the compliance letters. She attended the rescheduled health department hearing in June, brought a binder with a table of contents, answered every question from the hearing officer in complete sentences with document references, and left with no citation upheld and no suspension implemented. The hearing officer, a woman named Gail Tarwick, who had been in the position for 11 years and had the face of someone who had seen many things she could not say out loud, looked at the temperature log, looked at Parrish's citation, looked at Nadia, and said that the matter would be taken under advisement. The advisement took 3 weeks. The formal finding arrived by certified mail on July 2nd. Proposed suspension not supported by available evidence. Case closed. 1 sentence. No acknowledgement of the discrepancy between the log and the citation. No finding regarding Parrish's conduct. Just closed. Nadia filed it under Health Department, resolved, and opened a new tab in the same folder labeled Health Department, Audit Pending. Because she had also, in May, submitted to the Georgia Department of Agriculture a secondary complaint, not about her own inspections, but about the pattern of inspection scheduling across all 12 of her locations. 4 of them had received repeat inspections in the same 8-week window. None of the repeat visits had produced upheld infractions. All of them had been conducted by inspectors who had, according to the county's own scheduling records obtained through FOIA, coordinated their visit dates through a shared calendar managed by Parrish's supervisor. The Department of Agriculture opened a records audit on July 15th. 34 citations across a 5-year window of Parrish's work history were flagged for review. Parrish took administrative leave the following week. His supervisor issued a statement saying the leave was voluntary and unrelated to any ongoing review. Nadia read the statement. She did not comment publicly. She filed the newspaper clipping and moved on. The summer was a long game of correspondence. Fitch sent 2 more letters, the second more formal than the first, citing the county's authority under its general business compliance framework to request continued documentation of operational standing. Both letters arrived with return envelopes, as if anticipating that she would need to respond. She used her own envelopes. She used certified mail. She tracked every receipt. Lenora Vass, for her part, had gone quiet in the direct sense. She did not return to the diner. She did not send correspondence. But in August, a development proposal for the Route 9 corridor was filed with the Garland County Planning Commission, a 144-page document from a Macon-based development company called Terrace Group Holdings, LLC. The proposal covered 12 commercial parcels on and adjacent to Route 9. 3 of them were within 1 block of cross-table diner locations. Nadia obtained the filing through the Planning Commission's Public Records portal. She read it on a Sunday evening in the back office with a legal pad beside her. On page 31, she found what she was looking for: a section on existing commercial tenants and operational transition planning. The language was careful, corporate, designed to sound like logistics rather than displacement. But the math was clear. Terrace Group's development timeline required vacant possession of 7 of the 12 parcels by March of the following year. Vacant possession, the phrase of someone who has already decided the current occupants will not be staying. She noted the development company's registered agent. She ran the name through the Georgia Secretary of State's Business Registry, public records, searchable online. Terrace Group Holdings, LLC, registered March 3rd of that year. Managing member, Barton Exley. Barton Exley, BX, Lenora Vass's chief of staff. She sat with that for a long moment. Then she picked up the phone and called Tessa Wren. "I can tell you where to look," Nadia said. "I won't tell you what you'll find. What you find is yours." Wren asked where. "The Planning Commission's public filing portal," Nadia said. "Terrace Group Holdings, registered agent, and the County Commissioner's Office calendar for February, both public record." She ended the call. She wrote in the notebook, August 14th, directed Wren to public records. No statement given. Wren's article ran on August 23rd in the Garland Courier, under a headline that was careful enough to not allege what it was nonetheless clearly showing. County development proposal raises questions about regulatory timeline. The article did not name Nadia. It did not name Cross Table Diner by name. But it laid out the timeline: the February meeting between Exley and Briggs, the March citation, the subsequent health inspections, Parrish's leave, the audit, alongside the development proposal, and Exley's role in both Vass's office and Terrace Group's registration documents. By noon on the day of publication, the article had been shared 400 times on local community boards. By evening, it had reached the Atlanta bureau of a state newswire service. By the following morning, Vass's office had issued a statement through her communications director. Commissioner Vass has no financial interest in Terrace Group Holdings and maintains appropriate ethical separation between her official duties and any private business activities of her staff. The Georgia Ethics Commission received a complaint, not from Nadia, who had submitted hers in May, but from a coalition of Route 9 business owners who had read the article and recognized their own situations in it. The complaint, assigned case number GEC-2024-0388, was accepted for investigation on September 4th. September brought two things Nadia had not anticipated. The first was a certified letter from the Garland County Attorney's Office, signed by the county's chief legal counsel, informing all parties that the county was undertaking an internal review of case GC-202-408-92, and that, pending the outcome of said review, no additional enforcement actions would be taken in connection with the Holloway Road property or affiliated Cross Table Diner locations. The letter was addressed to Nadia J. Cross, not the management of Cross Table Diner, not the operator of the establishment at 1847 Holloway Road. Nadia J. Cross. She noted the date and the phrasing. Someone in the county attorney's office had done homework they had not done in March. The second was a phone call from Deputy Sloan Avery. He called at 6:40 in the morning before the diner opened on a Tuesday. He asked if she had a few minutes. "Yes," she said. "This is unofficial," Avery said. "I want to be clear about that." "I understand." There was a pause. The kind of pause that carries a lot of unsaid things in a small space. "The body cam footage you received in the foyer packet," he said. "There's a gap in it." She had noticed the gap. The transcript jumped from 8:14 to 8:24 in 3 seconds. 10 minutes, 3 seconds. She had noted it in August and filed it under outstanding questions. "I'm aware of the gap," she said. "The department's explanation is a technical malfunction," Avery said. "I want you to know that's the department's explanation." A pause. "Is that all you called to tell me?" "No." Another pause, longer. "There are things in that 10-minute window that the transcript doesn't reflect. I can't tell you what they are. But I think when you're in that room in November, you should know that the gap exists and that it isn't an accident." She wrote the call time in the notebook and the substance of what he'd said. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me," Avery said. "I still filed the report. I still stood in your diner in March and said nothing." He ended the call. She sat with the phone for a moment. Then she added to the notebook entry. Avery's statement. "The gap is not an accident. Inference. Content of the gap is known to at least one witness. Status. Unverified, uncorroborated. Handle accordingly." October was preparation. Nadia hired an attorney in Atlanta, not a local firm, not anyone with county connections. Her name was Pauline Hatch, a civil rights litigator with 15 years of practice. And the first thing she said when Nadia brought her the binder was, "How long did it take you to put this together?" 8 months, Nadia said. Ongoing. Hatch turned pages. She turned more pages. She looked up once. "This is organized better than most attorney-assembled discovery packages." "I keep records," Nadia said. Hatch turned to the section on the body cam transcript. She read the entry for 8/24/18. She read it again. She set the binder down. "What's your objective for November?" Nadia was clear about this. She had been clear since May. "The Franchise Commission hearing is about the operational standing of 12 licensed businesses. I want that standing affirmed. I want the coordinated nature of the citations documented in an official proceeding. I want it on the public record. And Briggs? That's a separate process. The Office of Professional Standards, or the U.S. Attorney if the AG decides to refer. I'm not the one who decides that. Hatch nodded slowly. The 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 angle, East, civil rights under color of law. The body cam entry alone is suggestive. Combined with the Vass-Exley-Briggs connection, the timeline, the pattern of citations across multiple locations, that's a civil case. I'm aware. You're not leading with that in November. No, Nadia said. November is about the businesses. That's enough. Hatch looked at her for a moment. Then she picked up the binder again and went back to reading. The week before the November hearing, Gage Morton's name appeared for the last time. His employer, Morton Protective Services, LLC, had been named in the civil demand letter Hatch sent in September. The letter documented the May 8th incident in precise terms. Unauthorized physical contact. Witnesses named, dates, and time specific. Morton's employment by the county through the sheriff's security contractor arrangement documented through the county's own budget line items obtained through FOIA. Morton Protective Services, LLC's insurance carrier replied through their legal counsel. They proposed a settlement conference. The settlement conference occurred on October 31st, lasted 2 hours and 12 minutes, and concluded with a signed agreement. The amount was $47,500. The agreement included the standard language: no admission of wrongdoing by any party. Morton remained employed by a different county. Hatch had checked. He was working a security contract in the next county over by November. Nadia signed the agreement and did not comment on it to anyone. It was not the point. It had never been the point. The point was in Atlanta, in room 4C, on a Monday morning in November. She drove up the night before and stayed in a hotel 6 blocks from the commission building. She brought one carry-on bag and the binder, which had grown to 2 volumes over the summer. She ate dinner alone at a restaurant that was not one of hers and read through her prepared remarks one last time. She did not find anything she wanted to change. In the morning, she dressed carefully: a navy blazer, a cream blouse, dark slacks. Professional without performance. She walked to the commission building in the cold and arrived 23 minutes early. The Georgia State Franchise Commission's hearing room was smaller than she had imagined. A rectangular space with a raised panel bench for 5 commissioners, a table for each party, and seats along the wall for observers. There were 11 people in the observers' seats by the time the hearing was called to order at 9 a.m. Tessa Wren was one of them. A man with a court reporting service sat at a small desk to the side. A representative from the AG's Consumer Protection Division, a young man named Davies, who had called Nadia twice in October to confirm document submissions, sat in the second row of observers with a brown accordion folder on his lap. Representing Garland County, Dorian Fitch and a county attorney named Rollins, who was in his 50s and wore the expression of someone who had reviewed the documentation at the last possible moment and found it considerably worse than he'd been told. Nadia sat at her table. Hatch sat beside her. The 2 volumes of the binder sat in front of them, organized by tab. The panel chair, Commissioner Weston, a heavy-set man with reading glasses perpetually on his forehead, called the room to order. He stated the case number, the nature of the proceeding, and the parties. He asked if both sides were prepared. Rollins said yes. Hatch said yes. Weston looked at the clock. We'll hear from the county first, since the county initiated the original adverse action. Rollins spoke for 11 minutes. He was not a bad attorney, competent, measured, careful with his language. He framed the county's position in terms of procedural regularity. The citations had been issued through proper channels. The inspection process was standard. The trespass advisory had been issued in response to a resident complaint. He did not address the email. He did not address the development proposal. He described the county's actions as routine regulatory oversight. When he finished, Commissioner Weston looked at the panel. 2 women and 2 men flanking him, all with printed copies of the submitted documentation in front of them. One of the women, Commissioner Adler, had a yellow legal pad with writing on both sides already. She had been reading the binder tabs while Rollins spoke. "Ms. Hatch," Weston said, "you may proceed." Hatch spoke for 4 minutes, less than Rollins, which Nadia had approved. She laid out the structure of what the panel was about to hear, that the county's cited basis for its actions was contradicted by the county's own records, that the timing of those actions coincided with a development proposal directly connected to named county officials, and that the impact of those actions on a lawfully operating franchise business was specific, documented, and quantifiable. Then she looked at Nadia. "Ms. Cross has requested to present a portion of the documentation personally," Hatch said. "The panel's indulgence." Weston nodded. "Go ahead, Ms. Cross." Nadia opened the first volume of the binder to the tab marked Ownership and Operations. She did not clear her throat. She did not take a breath for effect. She simply began reading, the way she did everything, direct, without waste. "Franchise agreement," she said, dated September 14th, 2016. Franchisee, Nadia J. Cross. Geographic authorization, Garland County and 4 adjacent counties as defined in Exhibit A. She turned to the next page. Locations currently operating under this agreement: 12. The addresses of all 12 are listed in Exhibit A-1, all of which have been provided to this panel. Annual payroll across all 12 locations, $4,722,000, as reported on the most recent Georgia Department of Labor quarterly filing, dated October 1st of this year. She looked up briefly, not at the panel, at Fitch, who was looking at his own papers. Total employees, 214, all operating within Garland County limits, all tax compliant as of the Georgia Department of Revenue audit, completed March 3rd of this year. She set the page down. 11 days before Sheriff Briggs issued his first citation. The room was quiet enough that the court reporter's keys were audible. "The property at 1847 Holloway Road," she continued, "which is the subject of Case GC-2024-0892, the trespass advisory issued March 14th, is owned outright by Cross Table Holdings, LLC. Registered in Georgia. Managing member, Nadia J. Cross. Purchase recorded September 2021, Garland County Deed Book 847, page 112. She turned a page. "I did not lease the building. I own it. The trespass advisory was issued against the owner of the property to which it applied." Commissioner Adler wrote something on her legal pad and underlined it. "I'd like to address the health inspection citations," Nadia said, moving to the next tab. 3 citations were issued against the Holloway Road location between February and April of this year. 2 were cleared on re-inspection within 48 hours. The third, the proposed license suspension citing a pattern of recurring concerns, was the subject of a county hearing in June. The finding of that hearing, issued July 2nd, was proposed suspension, not supported by available evidence. Case closed. She held up the letter. That finding is in this binder at tab 7. She lowered the letter. The citation that formed the basis of the proposed suspension alleged a food safety temperature violation at Unit 3B, my walk-in refrigeration unit, at 6:45 a.m. on the morning of the third inspection visit. The cited temperature was 42 degrees Fahrenheit. She reached for the next document. The automated temperature log for Unit 3B, downloaded directly from the Garland County Health Department's own inspection interface. Authenticated by EAG investigator Dana Holm on April 2nd, and verified by Garland County YT Specialist R. Tate. Badge number 0449 shows a temperature of 35.2 degrees Fahrenheit at 6:44 a.m., 1 minute before the alleged observation. She set the log on the table. A 6.8 degree differential in 60 seconds. The same compressor, the same unit, 1 minute apart. The citation describes a temperature this equipment is not mechanically capable of producing in that time window. She turned another page. The Georgia Department of Agriculture has opened an audit of 34 citations issued by the same inspector over the period 2021 through 2024. That audit is ongoing. I'm not asking this panel to prejudge its outcome. I'm presenting the fact that the audit exists, that it was triggered in part by my complaint, and that the inspector responsible for the citations against my business is currently on administrative leave. Commissioner Adler had stopped writing. She was watching Nadia with the full, undivided attention of someone who has revised her expectations of what this hearing would be. "I'd like to address the email," Nadia said. Rollins looked up. She moved to tab 11. She removed a single page, a printout, clean, clear, the text fully legible. She read from it. Email. Sender, Commissioner Lenora Vaz. Recipient field shows one address, with one address redacted under attorney-client privilege. Subject line. Route 9 timeline. Date, February 19th. Time stamped 9:47 p.m. She paused, not for effect, to hold the room's attention at a precise moment. Full text. The Cross situation needs to become uncomfortable before the March renewal window. Let's discuss options Tuesday. Come through the side entrance, L. She set the page down. This email was produced through a FOIA request. It was in the Garland County Commissioner's Office's own files. It is dated February 19th, 23 days before Sheriff Briggs walked through the front door of my diner with a trespass advisory. It names me by surname. It establishes an intent, uncomfortable, and a timeline before the March renewal window. And it was sent from the county commissioner, who has since been named in a development proposal for the Route 9 corridor that would require vacant possession of properties adjacent to my locations. She looked at the panel. I am not asking this panel to adjudicate Commissioner Vass's conduct. The Georgia Ethics Commission is the appropriate body for that, and they have accepted a complaint for investigation. What I am asking this panel to recognize is that the regulatory actions taken against my businesses between March and May of this year did not originate in compliance concerns. They originated in a coordinated effort to create what this email calls uncomfortable conditions. Conditions that, if I had not documented them precisely and responded to each one within the applicable timeframes, would have resulted in the suspension of my operating license and, in all probability, the collapse of my franchise agreement. She closed the Volume 1. She opened Volume 2. I'm going to provide one more document. This is the chain of custody record for the temperature log I mentioned earlier. The log was downloaded from the county server by AG investigator Holm on April 2nd. It was transferred to her office's evidence management system the same day under chain of custody number GCP-2024-1147-C. IT Specialist Tate authenticated the file hash on April 4th. The log has not been modified since its original generation. Its timestamps are system-generated, not manually entered. She set the document on the table. The citation it contradicts was written by hand, on a county form, by an inspector who is currently on administrative leave. She looked at the panel one more time. "I was asked 30 seconds to explain myself on March 14th, she said. "I have now spent 8 months explaining myself through the only means available to me: documentation, procedure, and patience." She set both volumes of the binder precisely on the edge of the table. "I am not here to ask permission to continue operating. I have been operating for 8 years. 214 people depend on the continuation of that operation. I am here to establish in an official record that the actions taken against my businesses were coordinated, pretextual, and without factual basis. That is all." She sat down. The room stayed quiet for 3 seconds. Then Commissioner Weston looked at Rollins. "Counselor, I'd like to hear the county's response to the email." Rollins' response to the email was measured, which was the most it could be. He said that the email had been produced through the county's own FOIA process, which demonstrated transparency. He said that the language of the email was subject to interpretation. He said that Commissioner Voss's office had denied any connection between the email's content and the subsequent regulatory actions. He said that the county's compliance actions had followed proper channels at each step. Commissioner Adler looked up from her legal pad. She had the expression of someone who has been practicing patience in a professional context for a long time. "Counselor," she said, "the email uses the word uncomfortable. It references a specific name. It has a specific timeline that precedes the first adverse action by 3 weeks, and it was sent from a county commissioner's official account to a redacted recipient, a redaction your office has cited attorney-client privilege to maintain." She set her pen down. "Who is the redacted recipient?" Rollins said he was not in a position to disclose privileged communications. "Is the redacted recipient Sheriff Briggs?" "I'm not in a position to." "Counselor." Adler's voice was not sharp. It was flat in the way that flat is more precise than sharp. "The calendar record produced through FOIA shows a meeting between Barton Exley and a party listed as CB on February 20th. The day after this email. Do you know who CB is?" Rollins consulted his notes. He took longer than he needed to. "I'm not able to speak to the content of internal scheduling abbreviations." "I see." Adler picked up her pen again. She wrote 2 words on her legal pad and circled them. Then she looked at the panel chair and said, quietly but clearly enough for the room to hear, "Weston, I'd like the full email chain requested, unredacted, through the appropriate process before we deliberate." Weston nodded. "Noted. We'll include it in our findings request." Fitch, who had not spoken since the hearing began, shifted in his seat. It was the first physical movement he'd made in 40 minutes. Rollins leaned slightly toward him and said something in a very low voice. Fitch's jaw tightened. Whatever the something was, he did not look pleased by it. Weston called a recess. The recess lasted 22 minutes. During it, Nadia sat in the hallway on a wooden bench with a cup of coffee from the building's vending machine and read nothing, said little, and listened to the building around her. Hatch made 2 phone calls and came back with the expression of someone who has received information that confirms rather than surprises. Davies from the AG's office, Hatch said, sitting beside her. He says the criminal division has received a referral from the Consumer Protection Team. They're evaluating whether the conduct rises to 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 VA, deprivation of rights under color of law. Timeline? Nadia asked. Indeterminate. They'll review the same documentation you submitted, plus whatever the commission sends them from today. Hatch paused. He also said off record that the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia got a copy of the Wren article in August and flagged it internally. Nadia drank her coffee. That's separate. Very separate. Might take a year, might take 2. I know. She looked at the floor. That's not today's problem. When they went back inside, Fitch was not at the county table. Rollins was there alone. On the other side of the room, Tessa Wren had opened a notebook. Davies had moved to the front row of observers. Weston reconvened the hearing. He noted for the record that Deputy Administrator Fitch had been called away on a county matter and would not be returning. The phrasing was precise and said nothing. The room heard what it heard. Commissioner Adler asked one more question before the panel indicated it would take the matter under advisement. She looked at Nadia. Ms. Cross, she said. The county's original citation, Case GC-2024-0892, the Trespass Advisory Yemite. What is its current status? Hatch answered before Nadia could. The county attorney's office indicated in a letter dated September 14th that no further enforcement action would be taken pending internal review. To our knowledge, the citation has not been formally withdrawn, but neither has it been prosecuted. Has the district attorney received it? The Garland County DA reviewed the case in August. Hatch said. We were informed by the DA's office that the case was declined for prosecution. Insufficient evidence of a crime, given that the named party, she paused precisely, owns the property. Adler nodded. She wrote one more thing on her legal pad and closed it. Thank you, Weston said. The panel will deliberate and issue its written findings within 30 days. Both parties will be notified by certified mail. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. Nadia sat still for a moment. Around her, the room began to move. Observers rising, the court reporter gathering her equipment, Rollins sorting papers with the mechanical efficiency of someone trying to look occupied. At the county table, the space where Fitch had sat was clean. He had taken everything with him. Tessa Wren was already on her phone in the corner, speaking quietly. Hatch put her hand on the table, not on Nadia's arm, not a touch, just on the table near her. That went well, she said. We'll see what the findings say, Nadia said. But they both knew what the findings would say. The question was not whether she would win this room. The question was what winning this room would and would not reach. The formal findings arrived on December 16th by certified mail. Nadia was at the Holloway Road Diner when the envelope came, a Monday early, before the lunch rush. She was doing invoices. Calvin signed for the delivery and brought it to the back. She read it standing at the desk. In the matter of Cross Table Holdings, LLC, Franchise Operational Status Review, the Commission finds as follows. 1. The franchise agreement between Cross Table Holdings, LLC, and the parent franchise entity is valid, current, and properly registered with the Georgia Secretary of State. All 12 locations operate under valid franchise authorization. 2. The health inspection citations issued against the Holloway Road location between February and April of the current year are not sustained. The Commission concurs with the Garland County Health Department hearing officer's July 2nd finding. 3. The trespass advisory issued as Case GC-2024-0892 on March 14th was issued without factual basis. The named individual is the registered owner of the cited property. The Commission recommends referral to the Georgia Attorney General's office for review of the circumstances of the citation's issuance. 4. The Commission notes with concern the email correspondence dated February 19th and the development proposal timeline outlined in the submitted documentation. These matters fall outside this Commission's jurisdiction, but have been referred to the Georgia Ethics Commission for supplemental consideration in connection with pending matter. GEC-2024-0388. 5. Cross Table Holdings, NLLC's franchise operational status, is affirmed in full. No adverse findings apply to any of the 12 licensed locations. She read it twice. Then she put it in the filing cabinet under a new tab she labeled Affirmed. Then she went out front and poured herself a coffee and sat on a counter stool, the one at the far end, near the window, and watched the street through the glass for 5 minutes. The Office of Professional Standards Investigation into Sheriff Colt Briggs had been opened in October under case number OPS-2024-2214, concurrent with the AG's review. The OPS was a unit within the state's public safety oversight structure, separate from the county, with authority to investigate elected law enforcement officials on complaints of misconduct. The complaint against Briggs cited potential violations of 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, the Friends, deprivation of rights under color of law. The predicate was the March 14th trespass advisory, the body cam transcript entry at 8/24/18, the February 19th email, and the pattern of subsequent regulatory actions. Briggs had been represented since October by a union attorney. The County Sheriff's Union was one of the state's better-resourced law enforcement unions, and their attorneys were practiced at this particular kind of case. They filed preliminary objections to the scope of the OPS investigation in November. The objections were denied. They filed a request for a 60-day extension of the response period. It was granted. On December 22nd, 6 days after the Franchise Commission findings arrived, Briggs was suspended without pay, pending the outcome of the OPS investigation. The suspension was administrative. It was not a termination. He retained his benefits pending the final outcome. He remained represented by the union. The county administrator issued a statement. It used the phrase administrative action consistent with department policy. It did not use the word misconduct. It said the department was committed to a thorough and impartial review. Tessa Wren published the suspension notice on the Garland Courier's front page. She included the commission findings. She included the body cam transcript entry verbatim. She included a quote from Nadia, the first public statement Nadia had made since the beginning of all of this. The statement was 3 sentences. I kept records. I filed the appropriate complaints. The process is working slowly, the way it works. Nothing more. Wren tried for more. Nadia thanked her and went back inside. Lenora Vass did not resign. She did not make a public statement about the Ethics Commission inquiry. Her communications director issued a written response to every press inquiry with the same 6 words. Commissioner Vass is cooperating with investigators. Whether that was true in the meaningful sense of the word, whether cooperating meant producing the unredacted emails, or whether it meant showing up when required while producing as little as possible, was not public. The Ethics Commission's proceedings were not open to the public at the investigative stage. The Terrace Group Holdings development proposal remained filed with the Planning Commission. No action had been taken on it. The Planning Commission's meeting in November had been tabled pending the outcome of the relevant county matters. The meeting in December had been tabled again. Barton Exley had resigned from Voss's office in October, citing personal reasons, and had not made public comments. His name remained on the Terrace Group LLC registration. The LLC itself remained active. Wells Parish's audit was ongoing. The Georgia Department of Agriculture's review of 34 citations was expected to produce findings in the first quarter of the following year. His supervisor, who had managed the shared inspection calendar, had also been placed on leave in November. The connection between the calendar management and the coordinated inspection timing was explicitly noted in the Agriculture Department's preliminary audit memo, a document Nadia had obtained again through a FOIA request she had filed in September. The memo used the word pattern 4 times. In early January, 2 weeks after the new year, Sloan Avery came to the diner. He came on a Tuesday morning at 7:40, not in uniform. He was on administrative leave himself, pending the outcome of an OPS review that had been opened alongside Briggs's based on the body cam entry that appeared on his footage. Whether his conduct on March 14th constituted an independent violation or merely a failure to intervene was a question the OPS had not yet answered. He came in and sat at the far end of the counter, the same stool Nadia had occupied the morning the Franchise Commission findings arrived. He ordered coffee, black. Nadia poured it. She did not comment on the leave, on the investigation, on the fact that the last time she had spoken to him was on the phone in September, when he had told her the 10-minute gap in the body cam footage was not an accident. They sat in the quiet of the morning rush for a few minutes, him with his coffee, her wiping down the counter, the room around them carrying on its Tuesday. Then he said, without looking up from his mug, "I should have said something in March." She wrung the cloth out over the small sink. "Yes, I know that doesn't." "It doesn't," she said, "but I heard it." He nodded. He drank his coffee. He sat for another 5 minutes without speaking, and then he reached into his jacket pocket and set something on the counter. A folded piece of paper, small, the kind torn from a notepad. He put it down and put his hand back in his pocket and said nothing. She looked at it. She did not touch it. "What is that?" "A name," Avery said. "And a number." He looked up for the first time. "Not mine. Someone who was in the building that morning. Before we came in the room where the body cam feeds to the county server." He picked up the mug and drank the last of the coffee. He set it down without sound. "I'm not able to say more than that," he said. He left $6 on the counter, 3 times the cost of the coffee, and walked out without hurrying. Nadia looked at the folded paper for a long moment. Then she opened it. A first name, a last name she didn't recognize, a phone number with a Garland County prefix. She read it twice. Then she folded it back on its creases, carried it to the back office, and placed it in the filing cabinet. She made a new tab. She labeled it Outstanding. She returned to the counter and to the 11 people who needed their orders taken and their coffee refilled and their Tuesday to proceed normally. The OPS investigation was projected to take an additional 4 to 6 months. The criminal referral from the AG's Consumer Protection Division to the Criminal Division was under review. Timeline indeterminate. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Georgia had neither confirmed nor denied interest in the matter. Dorian Fitch had submitted a resignation from his position as Deputy Administrator of the Garland County Office of Business Compliance, on November 19th, one day after the Franchise Commission hearing. The resignation was accepted. He left with his pension intact, his record noting the resignation as voluntary. No termination proceedings had been initiated before the resignation was received. The county's Business Compliance Office had been placed under the supervision of an interim director, appointed by the county administrator. An external audit of the office's citation practices had been announced in December. Whether that audit would produce findings, what those findings would recommend, and whether any recommendation would be implemented. These were questions with no answers yet. In February, the Garland County Commission passed, by a 3-to-1 vote, a resolution requiring that all health inspection visits to commercial properties be conducted with advance notice of no less than 48 hours, except in cases of reported imminent public health risk. The resolution was proposed by one of the commissioners who had attended the community meeting in March and had read Tessa Wren's August article 3 times. The notice requirement was a policy announcement. Whether the department had the staffing capacity to administer it consistently, whether inspectors in the field would follow it without supervision, whether any mechanism existed to enforce it against violations. These were questions that the resolution did not answer. The county administrator said the department was committed to implementation. He said it would be phased in over the coming months. Nadia read the resolution in the Garland Courier on a Thursday morning. She noted it in the notebook. She did not celebrate it. Policies were announced. Enforcement was something else. The Franchise Commission's referral to the AG's office produced one additional visible action in February. A formal civil investigative demand issued to the Garland County Sheriff's Office and the County Commissioner's Office, requiring production of all communications, internal and external, redacted or otherwise, related to Case GC-2024-0892 and the February 19th email chain. A civil investigative demand, unlike a FOIA request, was not optional. It carried the authority of the AG's investigative function under Georgia law. The county had 30 days to comply. On day 29, the county produced the documents. The packet arrived at the AG's office in Atlanta with a cover letter from the county's outside counsel, not Rollins, who had been replaced, but an Atlanta firm the county had retained at significant expense for the occasion. The AG's office reviewed the documents. The review was not public. What came out of it, if anything, would come out slowly and through official channels and would not look dramatic from the outside. Nadia knew this. She had known it since May when she filed the first complaint. The process was not a story with an ending. It was a record. Records accumulated. Records produced accountability in the way that slow water produces a canyon, not by force, but by persistence against something that had believed itself immovable. March the 14th of the following year, 1 year exactly from the day Briggs had walked through the door with his trespass notice and his 30-second ultimatum, was a Wednesday, the same day of the week. Nadia arrived at the diner at 5:15, same as always. She ran the equipment checks. Unit 3B read 34.9 degrees on the automated log. She opened the notebook to the entry from 1 year prior and read it, not because she needed to, but because precision demanded acknowledgement. Then she opened the notebook to a fresh page and wrote the date, the temperature, and 3 words, all 12 open. The morning passed, and the way mornings passed, steady, busy, the particular rhythm of a place that knew what it was doing. Deja and Calvin arrived on time. The regulars came in. The coffee was right. The grill ran clean. Gerald Ford did not come in. He had not come in since October. Nadia did not note his absence, because absences don't enter the record the same way presence does. At 8:20, the front door opened. It was not Briggs. Briggs was suspended at home, represented by a union attorney, and unlikely to enter this building again in any official capacity. The person who came in was a woman Nadia had never seen. Mid-40s, dark coat, the professional posture of someone who spent a great deal of time in buildings like this one without eating in them. She looked around the room with the quick assessment of someone who had been told to find a specific person and was locating her. She walked to the counter. She did not sit. "Miss Cross?" she said. "Yes." "My name is Trella. I'm with the U.S. Attorney's Office, Northern District of Georgia." She did not produce a card immediately. She produced it after, as if confirming rather than establishing. "I was hoping you had a few minutes." Nadia looked at the room. Deja was covering the floor. Calvin was on the grill. Everything was in order. "I have a few minutes," she said. She poured 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, one for Trella, who accepted it without remarking on the gesture, and they sat in the back corner, the 6-top that families used on Sunday mornings. Nadia brought the notebook, not because she was required to, because that was what she did. Trella asked careful, precise questions. She asked about the sequence of events in March, April, and May. She asked about the body cam transcript, which she had clearly already read. She asked about the February 19th email, which she had also read. She asked about the 10-minute gap in the body cam footage. "Deputy Avery contacted me in September," Nadia said. "He indicated the gap was not a technical malfunction." "Did he say what it contained?" "No." Trella wrote something on a notepad she had produced from her coat pocket. "We've spoken with Deputy Avery," she said, without expanding on what that conversation had produced. She asked one more question before she left. "Mrs. Cross, in your assessment, and I recognize this is not a legal determination, do you believe the actions taken against your businesses were coordinated?" Nadia looked at her. "I believe the documentation shows coordination. The assessment of what that means under law is yours to make, not mine." Trella nodded. She finished the coffee. She closed her notepad. "We'll be in touch," she said. "The timeline is, we're in the early stages." "I understand timelines," Nadia said. Trella looked at her for a moment, not with the evaluating expression of the first minute, but with something that had replaced it, something closer to understanding. "I imagine you do," she said. She left. The door swung once and was still. Nadia sat in the 6-top for another minute, alone, with her coffee. Through the pass-through window she could hear the grill hissing, Calvin calling out an order, Deja answering, the sound of a room that was working. She opened the notebook. She wrote the date, March 14th. Year 2. She wrote Trella's name and title and the phrase early stages. She wrote the time of the visit. Then she wrote one more line, below the others, and underlined it once. The process is not a story with an ending. It is a record. She closed the notebook, tied the rubber band around it. New rubber band, replaced last week, and went back to work. The 11 redacted pages from the original FOIA response were never explained. The AG's civil investigative demand had produced the fuller email chain, which was now in the possession of the U.S. Attorney's Office and the AG's investigators, but not in the public record. What those emails contained, who else was named in them, whether they implicated parties not yet identified in public proceedings, these were questions that had no public answers. The note Avery had left on the counter, The name and number on the torn notepad page had been passed to Hatch in January. Hatch had made inquiries. The name was a county IT employee, a man who had worked in the server room on the morning of March 14th, a man who was not currently employed by the county, a man whose departure in April had been logged as a voluntary resignation. Hatch had passed the name to Davies at the AG's office. What Davies had done with it was not yet visible. The body cam footage gap, 10 minutes, 3 seconds, from 8:14 to 8:24:03, remained officially unexplained. The county's technical malfunction explanation had not been withdrawn, but it had not been supported by any independent technical review. The OPS investigation had requested the server logs. The county had produced partial server logs. Whether the partial production was complete or selective was a question the OPS had raised in a formal inquiry. That inquiry was pending. The pending could last a long time. Nadia knew that. She had built 8 months of meticulous preparation for a room that took 30 days to issue its findings. The U.S. Attorney's Office operated on timelines that made 30 days look instant. She did not think about the timelines as a source of frustration. She thought about them the way she thought about the diner's annual lease renewals, which required 90 days' notice and produced response within 60. Not because the landlord was quick, but because the system moved at the speed it moved, and you planned around that speed rather than against it. The statewide franchise convention was in April. Nadia attended. She presented on operational resilience and documentation practices, not the specific circumstances she had been through. Because the case was ongoing, and Hatch had been clear about what she could discuss publicly. But the framework, the discipline of record-keeping, the way a filing cabinet with color-coded tabs is, in practice, a form of legal preparation you begin before you know you need it. 82 franchise operators attended her session. She had not expected that. She had expected 30. Afterward, 4 of them came to speak with her individually. One ran a franchise operation in a county 200 miles south. She described a situation, inspection timing, permit challenges, rezoning pressure, that had the outline of something familiar. She asked Nadia what she had done first. Documented, Nadia said. The first day, before anything was serious enough to require it. What did you document? Everything, every visit, every comment, every piece of paper with a date and a signature. She paused. You don't need to know in advance what will matter. You just need to have it when it does. The woman wrote something on her own notepad. She looked up. Does it help, actually? Nadia thought about the Franchise Commission hearing. The temperature log, the certified mail receipts, the notebook 2/3 full now and starting on a 3rd rubber band. It didn't fix everything, she said. It fixed what it fixed. The rest is still moving. In May, 13 months after Briggs had walked through the door with his 30-second ultimatum, the OPS issued its preliminary findings on case OPS 202422214. The findings were 12 pages. Nadia read all of them. The preliminary finding was that Sheriff Briggs had issued case G C-2024-0892 without probable cause, in the absence of any documented complaint from an identified complainant, and in a manner that raises significant questions regarding potential selective enforcement based on the race of the named individual. The language was careful. Raises significant questions. Not constitutes a violation. Not is hereby found to be discriminatory. Questions. Preliminary. Subject to final review. 2 additional findings. that the conduct reflected in the 08-2418 body cam transcript entry, "Sarah, these people always fold," represented a statement inconsistent with impartial enforcement of law and warranted formal inclusion in any disciplinary record, and that the 10-minute gap in the body cam footage has not been satisfactorily explained and remains an area of active inquiry. The preliminary findings recommended, not ordered, recommended, that Briggs's suspension be extended pending final review, and that the case be referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office for consideration of whether federal civil rights statutes had been implicated. The case had already been referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The referral was now doubled. Briggs remained suspended. The final OPS determination would come within 90 days. His union attorney filed a response to the preliminary findings within the 48-hour window permitted. The response described the body cam entry as taken out of context and challenged the OPS's characterization of the citation as lacking probable cause, citing the resident complaint that had prompted it. The resident complaint that had prompted the citation had never been produced. The complainant had never been identified. The complaint form, if one existed, had not appeared in any FOIA production. The OPS noted this in the preliminary findings, in a single sentence on page 9 that read, "The predicate complaint referenced in the March 14th citation has not been produced, and its existence has not been verified through available documentation." One sentence, 9 pages in, precise and devastating in the way that understated things are. The name on the notepad Avery had left. The county IT employee who had been in the server room on the morning of March 14th was, by spring, under active investigation by the AG's Criminal Division. Hatch had been informed of this by Davies in a phone call that was careful and brief, and confirmed only that the lead had been pursued and that it was producing results. What those results were, whether they would produce charges, against whom and for what, none of that was visible yet. The criminal process moved in the dark before it moved in the light, and the light was still a long way off. Nadia wrote in the notebook, "May, IT employee, under investigation. Status, active. Timeline, unknown." There was, in June, one moment that did not go in the notebook. It happened on a Saturday morning when the diner was at its busiest, the 6 top full, every counter stool occupied. Deja and Calvin both moving fast, the grill running everything at once. A family at the 4 top near the window, a man and a woman in their 30s, and 2 children, maybe 7 and 9, who were discussing their pancakes with the serious negotiating energy of people for whom this was the most important thing happening. Nadia was behind the counter. She was doing what she always did, moving, managing, watching, making the system work through the bodies of the people inside it. At some point, she stopped for a moment at the end of the counter. Just stopped. The way you stop in the middle of something, because the room has become, without announcing it, perfectly itself. The light was right. The sound was right. The children at the 4 top had reached some agreement about the pancakes and were eating now, with the focused contentment of a problem solved. The man with the newspaper at the far stool had reached the section he always read last. The radio was on, low. She stood there for a moment. Then she picked up the coffee pot and went back to work. The 12 locations were open, all of them, every morning. The one on Holloway Road and the 11 others, some larger, some smaller, all running on the same systems she had built and refined and documented and, when necessary, defended. 214 people. Garland County. The OPS final determination was expected in August. The U.S. Attorney's Office had given no timeline. The Ethics Commission inquiry into Voss was ongoing. Parrish's audit was ongoing. The body cam gap remained officially unexplained. The 11 redacted pages remained unexplained. The name Avery had left on the counter was part of an active criminal investigation whose outcome was not yet visible. The policy requiring advance inspection notice was on the books. Whether it would be enforced was a question for the months and years ahead, not a question she could answer and not one she was waiting for someone else to answer on her behalf. She would document what happened. If the policy was ignored, she would document that. If a citation came that violated it, she would document that. She had a filing cabinet. She had the notebook. She had certified mail receipts going back 13 months. The record continued. In the week of the 1-year anniversary, an envelope arrived at the diner. No return address, which was unusual. Hand addressed to Nadia J. Cross, 1847 Holloway Road. She opened it in the back office, standing. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds. No letterhead, no signature. 3 lines, typed. The email from February 19th had a 4th recipient. Not Briggs. The address is in the documents the county produced to the AG. It's on page 41, partially redacted. The domain is garlandco-gov.us. The name is not in any public directory. That was all. She read it twice. She looked at the envelope. No postmark from Garland County. The postmark was from Atlanta. She folded the letter on its creases. She went to the filing cabinet. She opened the tab labeled Outstanding, the same tab where she had placed Avery's notepad page, and put the letter behind it. Then she picked up the phone and called Hatch. I need you to request page 41 of the county's production to the AG, she said, with particular attention to the email header fields. Hatch asked why. I'll explain when I see you, Nadia said. Can you come this week? There was a pause on the line. I'll come Thursday, Hatch said. Nadia thanked her and ended the call. She stood in the back office for a moment, in the quiet that the kitchen absorbed from the front of the house during the late morning when the rush had ended and the room was catching its breath. The 4th recipient. A county email address. A name not in any public directory. The record continued. It was not finished. She had known it was not finished. There were still 11 pages of redacted text she had never read, and a 10-minute gap in a footage file that the county had never explained, and a preliminary OPS finding that used the phrase active inquiry and meant it. She picked up the notebook. She opened it to the current page and wrote 1 line. Page 41. The name is there. Proceed. Then she tied the rubber band around the notebook, new rubber band again. She went through them and walked back out to the front of the diner, where the next thing was already waiting.